Hey guys, what's up? Alan Bishop with the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute, your source for all things practical distilling, whether you're on the home distilling side or the legal professional distilling side. There's always something else to learn, and I don't know everything, but I know quite a bit, and I'm more than happy to help where I can. As always, reach out to me at bishopshomegrown@gmail.com and or via social media, any of my social media channels, or via the YouTube comments in this video, and I'll be glad to answer your question to the best of my ability and see if I can help you out with your distilling questions. So, as always, go to thealchemistcabinet.com, where you'll find the Warehouse 1, which is our store, where we carry autographed copies of my book, The Alchemist Cabinet Philosophy Volume 1, as well as the Short History of Distilling in Southern Indiana DVD and the Alan Bishop Experience DVD, as well as various different grain packages, staves, apparel, mugs, etc., all that fun stuff. More stuff coming soon. I'm working on the second part to the book right now, which is full of recipes, as well as a little bit more philosophy and thought, a little spirituality, but very in-depth, detailed recipes, particularly for highline distillation stuff, so going up to 160, 170, and then botanical distillation, which I've been playing around with the past couple years very heavily. I'm focusing on that, and I've done a lot of that on this channel specifically because I feel like a lot of people who are tuning into this channel, there are people who've been distilling at home for a little while, and maybe they want to go to the next step. So they understand simple pot still distillation, maybe they understand a little bit of reflux distillation, but this takes them to that next level and lets them to start to understand botanical ingredients in a different way and how to approach those distillations, and some of the more interesting things that you can do as far as textures and flavors go with those higher proof distillates, those base distillates, as well as botanical distillations. Absolutely beautiful day here today in Southern Indiana, Friday evening. It got up like 70 something degrees today here in November. November is my favorite month of the year, in all honesty. I love it. I love the ups and downs of it here in the Ohio Valley. This is the month that I feel the most me out of all the months in the year for whatever reason. So today, though, we had a viewer question, and I cannot remember who asked me this question, to be honest with you. Light up my coffin nail here. But somebody asked about fermenting and distilling orange juice. Ironically, I have done a lot of this over the years, and there are 4 or 5 orange juice brandy based recipes in that new book that I'm working on. So today I'm going to share with you a little information about fermenting orange juice and distilling orange juice, as well as a really cool gin recipe that we make about once a year. We don't drink a lot of gin around here. Mostly in the summertime, we'll drink it in highballs, like with ale-8 or ginger ale, maybe a ginger beer, something of that nature. But only really in the hot summer months. We don't go through a whole lot of it, so we don't make a whole lot of it. We don't need a whole lot of it. My dog is throwing a fit because the neighbors just pulled in. You'll have to ignore the barking in the background. There's always going to be some kind of barking in the background at the Bishop household. Anyways, looking back at my notes, and I do have to decipher my notes to some degree because I have terrible handwriting. So there's 2 different ways to handle orange juice brandy. And I have done other citrus as well. Other citrus aren't quite as easy. It's all about that pH, right? So I have in the past hand juiced a shit ton of oranges for orange juice brandy. The only reason I did that with fresh fruit is because I happen to know a store owner who had boxes and a truckload of this stuff, and he was just going to throw it in the dumpster, and it hadn't really gone bad yet. There wasn't anything wrong with it, so I thought, well, I'll try to put that to use. It took forever, to say the least. Southern Indiana home distillers are not outfitted to be citrus processors one way or the other. I will also say about orange juice derived brandy the following. So orange juice derived brandy, there actually is a huge company in Florida that does exactly this. Now, they mostly make neutral spirits from what I understand, but those neutral spirits have a little residual brandy flavor to them. So this is a thing that does exist out there commercially as well, guys, for various bases for different alcohols and things of that nature. The way that I've done this the past few times is I've actually used orange juice concentrate at the recommended dosage that you get on the frozen orange juice concentrate can. Is it the best way to do it? I don't know, but it's cheap, it's efficient, and it works. So going off of my notes here, it looks like the pH on that stuff is typically right around 3.5. Hey, there ain't nothing wrong with that. That'll ferment, especially if you use a brandy yeast. I would not recommend using a bread yeast for this, or a beer yeast, or even a distiller's active dry yeast. I would find a good brandy yeast and or a good wine yeast that will handle those pHs. If I did anything, I would adjust that pH up maybe about 2 points or so to about 3.8. So that way, as the fermentation continues, the pH continues to drop. You don't end up with a stalled fermentation. That's always a good insurance policy to have a little buffer zone there. It looks like right at the commercial level, the dilution was 1.040 specific gravity. It's fairly low. You're not going to get a lot of alcohol off that. So I do typically chaptalize this up to 1.060, which it looks like from my notes is right around 1 pound of sugar per gallon, roughly. We'll get you real close to that. Probably put you over just a little bit, but that's okay. It gives you a rough idea of what you need to do anyway. So it's really not that different from a sugar shine. You're just using frozen orange juice concentrate. So it looks like from my notes, you know, I was using right at 1 gram per gallon of yeast in general as well. It did ferment completely dry, 100%, no residual sugar. And then I stripped that in a pot still, making no cuts, so no heads, no tails, no hearts, collected everything. And then I doubled it in a pot with a deflator and a single plate. I think if I remember correctly, this was done on a pot with a 4-inch sight glass and subsequently a 4-inch plate with, I think, 3 bubble caps and 1 downcomer, if I remember correctly. So during that distillation, basically what I'll do is I'll start that distillation up. I do not run the deflator at all at first. I get up, get my heads off. I don't bother to compress my heads. Listen, that's just a good way to smear your cuts together when you're running reflux and running a bubble cap. I'd rather get all those heads out of there and out of the way and done with. And remember, you're dealing with pectin here too, so you're going to have more heads, you're going to have more foreshots, you're going to have a little bit more methanol, so take a little bit more off. Once I'm through the heads, and I kick on the deflator basically, and I start refluxing. And what I'm trying to do basically is hold at 170 proof for as long as I can. Doing this, what I'll do is I will watch that distillation until I start to see the proof drop. When I hit about 165, maybe even down to 160, if I'm being real brave, I'll know that I've dropped into my tails. At which point I cut the deflator off and I'll either turn the still off and empty it and clean it, or I might run those tails out in pot still mode, although there's not going to be a lot of volume of it, and hold on to those and put back into the next run of rectification distillation that I'm going to do. So again, going back up to 170 off of a stripped orange juice brandy, I'd go back into that low wine with that remaining tails and redistill it. So if you just wanted your orange juice brandy there, you could do that, or you could just do a simple double pot still distillation just for orange juice brandy. I will tell you, it's not that great on its own. It's not that interesting on its own. It's sort of a bland orange sort of characteristic and flavor. You could probably honestly get better orange flavor if you were to take, say, a nearly grain neutral spirit and just macerate the hell out of orange zest into it, and maybe even put some orange juice in it and redistill it. You probably get more orange flavor out of it if you wanted something that was a quote-unquote orange brandy, even though it doesn't really fit the technical specifications of a brandy. You could do that. All right, so that answers your question about orange juice fermentation and initial distillation. So now I'm gonna give you guys a bonus. I'm gonna give you one of the recipes from the new book that I'm working on, which will be a combination of these recipes, some philosophy, some thoughts, some distillation stuff in general, as well as a bunch of newspaper clippings and photos of a lot of the old distilling complexes here in the Black Forest of Southern Indiana, Washington, Orange, Lawrence, Crawford, Harrison, and Perry counties, just for historical reasons. And the future books that I do, they'll probably all be these smaller books with a lot of that historic information in them too. So, all right, so let's see. So prepare your botanicals appropriately, obviously. So grind, mash, and bruise, preferably with a pestle and a mortar, although you can use one of those roller mills for like malted grains that you can get from the brew store. Those work fine. Do not run your juniper or raisins or anything sticky through that. It becomes a nasty nightmare that I promise you, you do not want to deal with. I promise you 100% you don't want to deal with that. So what I do is I will take, just like when I do the absinthe, and I will put jars in the bottom of my still, basically lay them down on their side, so that when I put the botanicals in there in a double layer of cheesecloth that is tied off at the top, those botanicals are setting on a false bottom. I don't have to worry about them scorching, right? So it says, place the following in cotton cheesecloth. Line the bottom of the still with canning jars as a double boiler prior to your run, obviously. These botanicals are to be macerated and digested. Basically, heat the base alcohol to 140 degrees, add the botanicals to the base, and let it steep for 12 to 24 hours. Pretty standard stuff there. So juniper, 100 grams per gallon. Orange peel, 30 grams per gallon. Licorice root, 3 grams per gallon. Angelica root, 3 grams per gallon. Ceylon cinnamon, 3 grams per gallon. Cinnamon, 1 gram per gallon. Vanilla bean, 3 grams per gallon. Coriander, 8 grams per gallon. Clove, 3 cloves per gallon. And cardamom, 1 gram per gallon. All then placed in a cotton cheesecloth prior to distilling, tied off and laid atop jars in the still. The following botanicals are to be used quote unquote fresh, meaning you just went to the store, you bought the ingredients and you prepared these yourself, i.e. they are zested the day of distillation and placed into a gin basket where the vapor that can then run through. Preferably you would have a gin basket where you can bypass, actually you don't have to worry about that. Don't worry about that, just drop that out because you already got clean alcohol. You don't have to bypass shit, sorry. Getting confused here a little bit. Anyways, to that gin basket you add the zest of 4 lemons per gallon, the zest of 4 limes per gallon, and the zest of 1 grapefruit per gallon. From there, and we prefer to harvest this from our farm. Me and my daughter go out every year and we harvest a ton of honeysuckle and dry it. We want that honeysuckle fresh, we want it floral, we want it just opened up. We go out, we pull the flowers off of it, we put it in the dehydrator on the lowest setting we can for about 12 hours, and we put it in mason jars, and it lasts for years, and it is a wonderful botanical that we use a ton. So we're doing 6 grams per gallon of honeysuckle in the gin baskets. So distillation, basically, you're going to take off a very small foreshot. It's not really a foreshot, although you could argue that, you know, the distillation, you're going through new distillation, you know, you're reconcentrating what little methanol is there. What you're really doing is you are removing a little bit of distillate from a botanical distillation, because what happens is as those botanicals heat up, the cell walls begin to expand and they burst, and the initial burst of oil that they give can be a little off-putting, especially as it's sort of sorting itself out in the still. So we take a few milliliters off, throw that out of the way. Now you're into your hearts, and you're just in pot still mode. You're not running reflux here with the gin basket. You start collecting your hearts. What you're basically going to do is you're going to begin to collect your hearts, and you're going to follow your hearts down, and you'll notice that each of those botanicals, just like with absinthe or anything else, it pie pieces out. A different botanical show up at a different proof as you start dropping proof. We're going to run that distillation down to only 120 proof. No lower than 120 for this many distillations. And the reason for that is because we have already compressed all of our alcohol, right? So your tails are going to start at a higher proof. They're going to start at about 120 proof. Typically, the other thing that happens is you're going to want to cut to tails anyways when you get to 120 proof, because all that stuff that's in that gin basket, it's spent. Now you're pulling vegetative aromas and flavors off of it. You don't want that. You don't need that. You just spent a whole bunch of time with a risky fermentation and a double distillation to now do a third distillation with a whole bunch of botanicals that you prepared. Guys, these botanical distillations, no joke, they take a lot of work and patience and time and honestly love and spirit if you're going to do them. I don't collect my tails off of that typically, although you can. Again, you would set those aside. Those go back into the low wines of the same orange juice brandy that's been stripped one time to be rectified in 170 proof base alcohol for your next gin project. So me, I store my gin in a dark, cool place in a carboy. I usually cover it with a couple layers of cheesecloth, and I let it sit there for a couple months to air out. We're about to do a video about that here momentarily. That is a traditional European thing that you will see with spirits a lot, is allowing air and oxygen to get into them to mellow them over time. Even white spirits, it doesn't hurt anything at all. I tend to proof it to 90 proof on average. You have to do that slowly. So you remember saponification we talked about? We talked about absinthe lushing, right? It turning white. There are enough botanicals, oils in this that you will loosh this, and if you loosh it, it ain't coming back. You can't fix it. It's screwed. You could rerun it, but everything's going to be all jumbled. It's not going to be in the proportions you want. The best thing you could do is just rerun it up to 170 proof and use it for base alcohol again, and who really wants to spend that much time doing that over? It really gets risky when you get between 110 proof and 90 proof. That's when it's going to want to loosh. That's when you really got to take your time proofing it down. Maybe take a few days to get there. Once I do that, I will typically bottle this into green or brown bottles. They're UV resistant. You know, I have a tiny house that I live in. I don't have great places to store things, so, you know, sometimes it gets exposed to UV light. I want dark bottles, especially because we, again, don't drink gin all that often. So it's going to need to store for several years, potentially. So, and there you have it, guys. That's what I've got. I thought that was something that you guys might appreciate and think unique and different. It gives you an orange-based brandy or an orange-based spirit that you can build off of. I have used it for many other spirits, and those other spirits will be in the book as well with complete recipes. So pastis, which is another anisette similar to absinthe, but without the wormwood. My only warning to any of you who are new to anisettes is that, you know, I can drink 4 or 5, 6 glasses of absinthe and have no hangover the next day. There's some trick to the wormwood that keeps you from having the hangover, in my opinion, my experience. pastis. No matter how much water I drank 4 glasses of that in one evening, and it destroyed me the next day. We did another, I think, another orange-based gin in there. There's a few different things. So there's also a cool little curacao recipe that's going to be in the book. So as always, guys, thanks for your support. I love and appreciate every one of you. I love being able to do these videos and help people out where I can. And we'll keep doing them for as long as you guys are interested. But hey, go to thealchemistcabinet.com if you appreciate what we do. Buy a few things. It supports the channel. It also supports my paranormal podcast. If you have ghosts, you have everything. Also, check out Distillers Talk podcast, wherever you get your podcast. And my brother, Justin Whaley, my still hand at Spirits of French Lick. Check out his podcast, Still Learning. We appreciate all of it. And if you weren't aware, we're also doing a competition, a giveaway. So I'm going to run this for a couple weeks yet. What we're doing is we are asking you to come up with a recipe that would challenge me to make on the 13 stills, one piece at a time, distilling and stewed crossover still, the Black Forest Edition still that I designed with Jason Wade Harold building it. It can either be a mash bill, it can be a single pass, it can be a double pass, it can be a single pass with reflux, it can be a double pass with reflux, it can be fermentation plus distillation plus botanicals, whatever you want it to be. And I will tell you, there is an early leader in this. I've gotten a few recipes, but there's one that just blows the others out of the water, and it involves a bunch of stuff that I've never done before, and I'm pretty excited about it. But if we choose your recipe, which you can send to bishopshomegrown@gmail.com, we will not only put it on the channel and try to produce it on the channel, we will give you full 100% credit for it, A, and B, we will give you a copy of the Alan Bishop Experience DVD, the Short History of Distilling in Southern Indiana's Black Forest Region DVD, a Alchemist Cabinet Philosophy Volume 1 autographed book, and a grain package, which we still have available on thealchemistcabinet.com/thewarehouse1. I might even throw in some cool barrel staves that I have that I've been setting on because I've been a little greedy with them. And that's what I got, guys. Love y'all. Later.